Hi, everyone. I'm Vladimir Dutit. We are watching all the news happening in the United States and around the world. Check out these feeds coming into the CBS News Broadcast Center. If you don't know by now, let me tell you, these are feeds coming in from all of our stations and affiliates across the country. If it's happening out there, we're going to bring it to you live right here. Let's begin. Ukraine and Russia have amplified their attacks and their munitions as Moscow reportedly launches ballistic missiles into Ukraine. Plus, a clearer look at the President-elect Donald Trump's proposed Department of Government Efficiency, which federal programs and personnel Elon Musk and Vivic Ramaswamy are planning to cut when the new administration takes over. Plus, a Florida man arrested for plotting to blow up the New York Stock Exchange. What we know about his plans to, quote, reset the U.S. government. This is CBS News 24/7. All right, we start with the new escalation in the war in Ukraine. Kyiv claims that Russia has used an intercontinental ballistic missile in an overnight attack. It happened in the city of Dnipro, but a U.S. official tells CBS News that it was a ballistic missile, but not an ICBM. This comes as Ukraine has used U.S.-made long-range missiles this week. CBS News senior foreign correspondent Holly Williams has more.
An air raid alarm sounded over Kyiv yesterday afternoon, sending us scrambling for cover. We took that alert very seriously because earlier in the day, the U.S. Embassy here in Kyiv announced it was temporarily closing because of a, quote, potential significant air attack. A Ukrainian military official told us they had information that Russia could try to strike the center of Kyiv with ballistic missiles. In the end, no missiles landed in Kyiv yesterday, but this comes after Ukraine fired 8 American-made ATACMS into Russia, according to U.S. officials. ATACMS are missiles with a maximum range of close to 200 miles, and their target was a military facility in the Bryansk region of southern Russia, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. Now, President Biden gave permission to Ukraine to use ATACMS deep inside Russian territory 3 days ago. Before that, their use was more limited because of concerns the powerful weapons could further escalate this conflict. The Kremlin, though, seems to be stoking fears of an escalation. Vladimir Putin approved a change in Russia's nuclear doctrine this week, lowering the threshold for a nuclear strike. A U.S. official called that, quote, irresponsible rhetoric. Back to you.
All right, let's get straight to CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata, who's joining me now from the Pentagon. So, Charlie, let's talk about how big of an escalation is this ballistic missile use.
Yeah, you know, Vlad, I know there was some discrepancy over intercontinental ballistic missile or ballistic missile, but as you saw in Holly's report, you know, she had to go scrambling for the shelter. And as you and I both know, you know, that's air raid sirens are a daily fact of life there, and most people have been ignoring them for several months because you'd never be out of the shelters. However, they're taking it seriously because of Russia's threats and because they have got the weapons to reach anywhere in Ukraine. So yes, ICBM, it gets everybody's attention. We knocked that story down. I was trying to find another phrase for that, but we knocked that story down here at the Pentagon. Ballistic missiles, Russia has a huge arsenal, and it's got a massive reach. You know, it's got S-300s, anti-aircraft. It's got the Iranian-supplied drones. It can reach anywhere in Ukraine. The fact that it can and has, I think it's more of a signal. You know, Dnipro, we hear it all the time, but that's not a frontline city. You know, this is a residential area. It's not what you would consider part of that volatile front line where the fighting is taking place, and that's largely artillery. This is just a signal from Russia that we've got the reach and we're ready to pull the trigger.
All right, so Charlie, clearly both sides are upping the hardware. Is there a chance at all for a diplomatic solution here? You'll recall, Charlie, and I want to know if what people at the Pentagon are saying, that the president-elect said that he could end this in just a phone call.
Yeah, well, you know, everybody's looking at January, right? We know that there's going to be a change of administration. So both sides, I know it's strange to say, but it's they're on war footing, right? They're jostling. Volatility is the way it's been described here at the Pentagon. They haven't seen that front line and other areas with the ATACMS, with the Russians firing back with this kind of weapons. They're sort of jostling for a position in light of, and I know it sounds counterintuitive, why would you fight if you're looking for peace? But this is all about leverage. For example, Ukraine would want to keep Kursk, that Russian region that they took over, as a bargaining chip in case they can sort of trade territory within Ukraine with Russia. And there's a sort of hurry-up offense. You know, we talked about that drawdown package, $275 million in financial aid and military aid that the United States has just signed off. That's rushing out. In fact, they're calling it a surge. It's been a surge since September in terms of giving the Ukrainians more of what they need, giving them permission to fire these longer-range attack weapons. So there's definitely volatility there. It's been off the front pages for so long. It's self-evident, right? We're talking about it. It's the top story. We've got teams out there. A lot is going on. There's a lot of attention because of the clock is ticking. We know there's an administration. We're not entirely sure how much support that administration is going to give to the Ukraine effort. And of course, both President Zelensky and the incoming administration talking about negotiations, that certainly signals that we might be looking at you know, a possible transition in this horrible conflict.
All right, Charlie D'Agata with some sobering news for us from the Pentagon this morning. Charlie, thanks, my friend. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Vlad.
All right, we're learning some new details about the plan for Trump's proposed Department of Government Efficiency. In an op-ed published by the Wall Street Journal, billionaires Elon Musk and Vivic Ramaswamy argue protections against firing workers for political reasons do not apply to them. They also revealed some of the programs they might target. I want to bring in CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe to talk more about this. So interesting, Ed, that there's a part of the electorate and the body politic that rails against billionaires and the privileged class, and yet here you have two billionaires who are talking about cutting government workers, many who don't earn all that much money. So what did we learn from this op-ed?
A few things, Vlad. First of all, they both make clear they are doing this on a volunteer basis and expect that their work will be done by July 4th, 2026, which is, of course, the 250th birthday of the United States of America. The big goal ultimately is to find $2 trillion in government spending that can be slashed or pulled back in various ways. Out of a $6 trillion budget, that's going to require a lot of spending. They argue that the president, given some recent Supreme Court rulings, has the ability now through executive order to essentially pause or completely cancel thousands of federal regulations across American society that they believe will ultimately save money, because then they can go and say, if this is the group of people at this agency that oversee or enforce that regulation, we can now lay them off and we'll help them find work in the private sector. They're also calling for, among other things, a 5-day-a-week in-the-office policy, which doesn't currently exist across much of the federal government in various departments where you don't necessarily have to be on the job in person, arguing that if there are people who don't agree with that policy, they're more than welcome to retire and, again, help cut savings through attrition. Whether or not this ever goes after some of the biggest parts of the federal government, wasteful Pentagon spending, as they put it, or touch things like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and the Affordable Care Act, remains to be seen. But ultimately, they're trying to make a big push here, especially early in the Trump administration, to identify billions, if not trillions of dollars in saving and fulfill a big campaign pledge, which was to cut back on federal spending and the scope and power of the federal government, and do so in a way that would fulfill a big campaign pledge for President-elect Trump.
Yeah, and it'll be very interesting to see how it rolls out, noting, of course, that Elon Musk is the beneficiary often of that government spending because he receives money from the federal government for his various technology, Starlink and other satellite uses that the United States pays him for. But yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what those legal challenges also look like, Ed. So let's talk now about Trump's pick for Secretary of Defense, staying in that defense realm. Pete Hegseth is meeting with some senators on Capitol Hill. That's happening today amid that police report that revealed more of those sexual assault allegations that we learned about earlier this week. So what are the details of the report, and who's he meeting with today?
It details an allegation, an incident in Monterey, California, a few years back, where a woman says she went to the police a few days after the alleged incident, claiming that she had been assaulted by Hegseth in some way. The Trump team here in Florida this morning saying in response to it that the report, quote, corroborates what Mr. Hegseth's attorneys have said all along. The incident was fully investigated and no charges were filed because police found the allegations to be false. It adds Pete Hegseth is a highly respected combat veteran who will honorably serve our country when he's confirmed as the next Secretary of Defense, just like he honorably served our country on the battlefield in uniform. As you mentioned, he is on Capitol Hill this morning meeting with Republican senators in anticipation of confirmation hearings. John Barrasso, the number 3 Senate Republican from Wyoming, saying in a statement in part that, to him at least, Hegseth, quote, pledged that the Pentagon will focus on strength and hard power, not the current administration's woke political agenda. Barrasso adds, national security nominations have a history of quick confirmations in the Senate. I look forward to Pete's hearing and a vote on the floor in January. So, among the most supportive of Republican senators, and Barrasso would be among them, the argument is this is much ado about nothing. They want him in place to, as Barrasso infers there, refocus the military on actual matters of war and military operations, less on a series of changes made that affect and reflect the change of the rank and file in recent years regarding women in combat, LGBTQ rights, and other changes that have been made by the Biden administration and have been a big obsession and focus of the Trump team and Republicans writ large over the last year or so.
Yeah, again, another interesting development, which will be interesting to see how it works out. Ed, I recall doing a story a couple of years ago on female Marines who were in combat arms and how many of them joined the Naval Academy without ever really knowing that before their time in the military, women were not able to serve in the roles that they are currently serving in. In fact, one young female officer was an artillery officer in charge of a platoon of mostly men, and she was a woman. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens in the months and the years ahead. Ed, as always, my friend, we appreciate your reporting. Thank you. All right, so let's talk about Trump's Attorney General pick, which of course remains a focus on Capitol Hill. The House Ethics Committee was deadlocked about releasing its report into former Congressman Matt Gaetz, but there are members on both sides of the aisles that want to see it. Reese Gorman is a political reporter for Notice, and he joins us now to discuss. Okay, so let's talk about what's next for Matt Gaetz. What's so interesting about this whole process, Reese, is how many people, not just, certainly there will be Democrats who find Matt Gaetz distasteful, but there are also a lot of members of his own party who don't really like this guy.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, he didn't have a lot of friends to begin with, and then after ousting former Speaker Kevin McCarthy, that kind of lowered and kind of lessened his allies in the House for sure, and also in the Senate. I mean, if you remember the comments from Senator Mark Wayne Mullen that he said that are kind of out there, that he used to kind of snort medicine and chug it with energy drinks. I mean, these are the types of things that people don't like about him, and they want to see what's in this ethics report. I know Representative Derek Van Orden said that he would be voting for a measure that would force the House Ethics Committee to release the report. And he is an extreme Republican from Wisconsin, and so these are just kind of the friends or not friends that Matt Gaetz has right now on the Hill.
So when it comes to Matt Gaetz, some of the allegations that are being made sound potentially very serious. In fact, some of them sound illegal. This was a Congress that made a big deal about President Biden's son, Hunter Biden's laptop, and how they wanted to see the contents of that laptop. Certainly there were some who fought that on the Democratic side, but I wonder what the appetite for Republicans writ large is to see that report and to see that report made public.
Yeah, I've reported myself that there are a handful of Republicans, a good amount actually, that do want to see that report. They want to see what's in it. Now, obviously, the allegations he's facing that he has denied, I will note, that he had sexual relations with a minor, sex trafficked her, and the Ethics Committee is also investigating that he participated in illicit drug use as well. These are things that have been reported, and this is also the claims that the women have made to the Ethics Committee, and they want to see what's in their report. Now, on the other side, there are other members, which I've also reported, that don't want to see what's in this report. They do not think that this report should be released. They do not think it's noteworthy. They think it's a political hit job, and they don't want this released. Now, there does seem to be some members of the Senate Judiciary Committee that do want to see what is in this report, or they think that it'll come up in FBI background checks or come up through the confirmation process. But all in all, there are a good amount of Republicans do think that what's in this report should at the very least be given to the Senate Judiciary Committee for his confirmation hearing.
Yeah, fascinating. All right, Reese Gorman from Notice. Thank you very much, Reese. Appreciate it, my brother.
Thank you.
All right, the deadly bomb cyclone is still blowing through the Pacific Northwest. It has left roads and homes across Washington, Oregon, and California in ruins amid heavy floods, snow, and high winds. 2 people in Washington state were sadly killed by falling trees. A tree crashed into one woman's Bellevue home, killing her on Tuesday night, and another woman died after a large tree fell on a homeless encampment in Linwood on the very same day. CBS News Sacramento reporter Colt Grays is checking out the storm's impact from Lake Tahoe, Nevada, and she joins me now. Colt, what are you seeing where you are right now?
Well, good morning. From this side of Lake Tahoe on the east side, a little bit of relief from the rain that we've been experiencing for the past 2 days. Earlier this morning, we were in South Lake Tahoe where there was rain and gusty winds. And that's at the same time that people are headed to South Lake Tahoe to check out those ski resorts, as opening day was just yesterday. So just to paint a picture of the Sacramento Valley and the routes to get to Lake Tahoe. So right now in the Sacramento Valley, there's rain dumping in that area. And then to get from there to some of the ski resorts in Lake Tahoe, there's two main routes. So there's Highway 50, which takes you to South Lake Tahoe, and then you have I-80, which takes you up to some of the ski resorts just north of Lake Tahoe. And those two different routes have two different stories. So Highway 50, though it's wet this morning, it's relatively clear, and folks have had a relatively seamless drive there. But meanwhile, on I-80, that's where chain control's in effect. There have been several spin outs. There have been backlogs of cars where the chain controls are. So that's where they're seeing a lot of commotion of how the snow from last night is impacting those road conditions.
Yeah, it sounds really terrible out there. Colt Grays for us this morning. Colt, be safe. Thank you. Let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Kate Bilo with the first look at the national forecast. Hi, Kate.
Hi, Vlad. Good morning. Yeah, we continue to monitor that atmospheric river, which doesn't really show many signs of letting up over California. Let's talk about what to expect. We'll talk about both northern corners of the country really here today. Those are the areas that are getting hit. The Northeast, rain and mountain snow. And of course, the Northwest, we've got the rain, we've got the wind, and more snow on the way. And this is going to get worse before it gets better. You can see where the heaviest rain is now there over Northern California. Rainfall totals could top 20 inches before all is said and done. You can see another cyclone just swirling off the coast there, and that's going to back its way in as we get into tomorrow. We also have a large-scale upper low over the Northeast, which is producing rain and some accumulating snow in the highest elevations. Out west, we've got winter weather alerts. We've got winter storm watches and warnings and winter weather advisories for those mountainous areas. We also have gale warnings, high wind warnings, and where you see the green, these are flood warnings. Let's talk about forecast rainfall for this area. Again, this flooding concern will continue into the weekend. 10 to 15 inches, possibly higher amounts expected over Northern California. We can also expect winds tomorrow to gust up to 50 miles per hour right up the northwest coast, and snow for the mountains. We'll talk more about that and the Northeast snow chances coming up in just a bit. Vlad, I'll send it back to you.
All right, Kate, thanks so much. Appreciate it. We'll check in with you a bit later. The father of accused Appalachia high school shooter has entered a not guilty plea this morning as he faces dozens of charges, including second-degree murder. We're going to have the latest from the courtroom. Stick around. We're following some breaking news this morning. The International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for these three men. You're looking at photos of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, his former defense minister Yoav Gallant, and Hamas military chief Mohammed Daif. They are accused of war crimes and crimes against humanity connected to Hamas's October 7th terror attacks on the state of Israel and the IDF response in Gaza. CBS News senior foreign correspondent Elizabeth Palmer has more from Tel Aviv.
The arrest warrants were issued for all three men for war crimes and crimes against humanity, although Mohammed Daif is believed to be dead, killed in an Israeli airstrike a few months ago. The court said there were reasonable grounds to believe that Netanyahu and Gallant had intentionally deprived Gazan civilians of food, water, medicine, and electricity. The warrants are going to put both of them at risk of arrest if they travel to any of the 124 countries that are members of the court, but that does not include the U.S. or Israel. Turning to negotiations on a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah, it does look as if it's crunch time. U.S. envoy Amos Hochstein is in Israel today, meeting with the Prime Minister. The U.S. blueprint for a deal lays out an initial 60-day ceasefire period between Israel and Hezbollah and stipulates that Hezbollah has to move its forces about 20 miles away from the border with Israel. There does appear to be a fundamental disagreement remaining over an Israeli demand, that is, for the right to strike Hezbollah militarily if Israel judges the ceasefire has been breached. Back to you.
All right, Liz, thank you very much. The Justice Department submitted a plan to break up Google after a judge ruled the company was holding too much power in the search engine business. The 23-page motion filed late Wednesday asked the court to order Google to sell off its Chrome web browser. It also calls for restrictions that would make it harder for Google-made Android phones to favor its own search engine. Arguments on potential next steps begin in April. Google has denied claims it has a monopoly and has promised to appeal the ruling. We're going to have much more on this, of course, in our 11 o'clock hour with CBS News Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady. New this morning, lawyers for the father of accused Appalachia High School shooter Colt Gray entered a plea of not guilty on behalf of their client. Colin Gray is accused of purchasing and giving his son the high-powered rifle that was allegedly used to kill 2 students and 2 teachers back in September. He now faces dozens of charges, including second-degree murder and involuntary manslaughter. CBS News national correspondent Manny Bojorquez joins me now from Georgia to discuss this case. Manny, what are you hearing out of court this morning?
Well, it was a relatively short hearing, about 5 minutes, because Colin Gray decided to waive his right to appear before the judge. So he was not in the courtroom, but his attorneys did enter a not guilty plea to the charges on his behalf. And we're talking about a slew of charges here, almost 30 charges, as you mentioned, including 2 counts of second-degree murder, 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, and 8 counts of cruelty to children. His attorney said that they would be filing motions in the next several days, did not specify exactly what those motions would be, but they're asking the judge for time to do that. So currently there is no other hearing set yet on the docket. Again, a quick hearing here, and we're hearing from that hearing that he pleaded not guilty to those charges.
All right, Manny, appreciate you. We'll check in with you throughout the course of this trial. Thanks for your reporting. The FBI stopped an alleged plot to bomb the New York Stock Exchange. What we know about the suspect and his plans. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Here's a look at some of the top stories we're following. A massive fire has torn through a California apartment complex, leaving dozens of residents displaced. Fire officials say the blaze ripped through the 2-story apartment in North Highlands, California. Late last night, it quickly spread from the ground up, forcing some residents to jump from their balconies. 3 people were injured. The cause of the fire is under investigation. The man charged with killing 4 University of Idaho students can face a death penalty if he's convicted. Brian Koberger's defense team tried to have the death penalty option thrown out, but the judge decided otherwise. Koberger faces 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of felony burglary in the 2022 stabbing deaths of those students. The trial is set to start in August. A volcano in southwestern Iceland has erupted for the 7th time this year. It spewed lava into the air and opened a nearly 2-mile fissure. Officials say there is no threat to air travel, but they did warn about gas emissions. They protectively evacuated some homeowners and tourists visiting the area. The heads of the FBI and Homeland Security this morning, who were supposed to take part in a Senate hearing on worldwide threats, but that hearing was abruptly canceled. CBS News Homeland Security and Justice reporter Nicole Scanga joins me now to talk about this. So, Nicole, why did Christopher Wray and Alejandro Mayorkas suddenly refuse to appear? This was just sort of a last-minute thing.
Yeah, Vlad, this is fascinating. The committee chairman, Senator Gary Peters, calls this a shocking departure from really a long-standing tradition of transparency. Actually, the first time in more than 15 years that a DHS secretary and the FBI director have refused to appear publicly before the committee. Senator Rand Paul, the Republican ranking member here, also echoing that sentiment, calling it unacceptable. The FBI saying for its part, you see it on the screen there, that the agency leadership has testified extensively in public settings about the current threat environment and that they believe lawmakers would actually benefit from doing this in a classified setting. And Secretary Mayorkas, DHS pointed out, has publicly testified 30 times before Congress. But the argument here, in order to discuss some of these threats in detail, it requires, the sharing of more sensitive information.
So what are some of those current threats? I mean, as you've indicated and as those the directors have indicated, we are well aware because we've seen them testifying on the Hill many, many, many times about the threats to the homeland. But are there things that maybe we're not aware of, and that is the cause for this classified briefing?
Yeah, Vlad, let's talk about the current threat landscape here. Federal investigators confirming earlier this month, but not giving too many details, that Chinese-linked hackers breached a slew of telecom companies, stealing data relating to the U.S.'s lawful wiretaps, exfiltrating cellular records on Americans, and even eavesdropping on the conversations of what they called a limited number of individuals who are primarily involved in government or political activity as part of this sort of espionage campaign by the Chinese. CBS News and others have reported that data was targeted on phones used by President-elect Trump and Vice President-elect J.D. Vance, again, part of this sort of wide-ranging intelligence collection effort, but a lot of questions there. Add to that intelligence agencies have been briefing the president-elect and have previously that Iran is still threatening his life, along with a list of former national security advisors who led his administration, all that, perceived as retaliation for the U.S. drone strike killing Qasem Soleimani, back in January of 2020. Separately, Iranian hackers targeting the email accounts of Trump's allies and, members of the campaign. We should note those attacks also targeted the Harris campaign, not to mention Homeland Security officials aware of, as the last report just indicated, an increasingly complex geopolitical landscape. Russia sending a volley of missiles to eastern Ukraine, Lebanon's southern district bombed by Israeli warplanes. The sort of lights have been blinking red for a long time, and all of this is happening as Trump continues his sort of portrayal of DOJ and the FBI as being weaponized, plus 2 assassination attempts on the president-elect's life, prompting calls for really serious reform within the ranks of the U.S. Secret Service.
All right, still to come, to be continued, my guess is, Nicole, because these lawmakers are going to want answers on some of those threats. We appreciate your reporting. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Vlad.
All right, a Florida man is in federal custody today, accused of plotting to bomb the New York Stock Exchange this week. The FBI says it began an investigation of Harun Abdul Malik Yenner in February, based on a tip that he was keeping bomb-making supplies in an unlocked Florida storage unit. CBS News New York's Alan Devlin is here with more. Alan, good to see you, my friend. So how did the feds make this arrest?
So it all started with that tip you were just talking about. Somebody came to them anonymously and said, you guys need to check this storage unit outside of Fort Lauderdale. They went and they found just about everything they needed to open up an investigation. And the crazy thing is, this didn't start this week or this month. We're going back to February with this one, Vlad. They opened it up in February. They got inside that storage unit. They found watches with timers on them. Wow. They found schematics for bomb making, and they found all the supplies you would need to actually construct a bomb. So it wasn't just words, it was actions too, and that's what got them going into it. The crazy thing is here, Vlad, the suspect here, Yenner, as you said, he actually spoke to undercover FBI agents and told them everything he planned to do. He actually asked them for photos of the New York Stock Exchange in exchange for what the best places to put bombs would be. So obviously that turned right into an arrest, which is what they made. The date to actually blow the place up, which is what he was planning on, Monday the 18th, just 5 days ago.
Wow. All right, so what happens next?
So right now he has been charged with attempting to damage or destroy a place of interstate commerce. And so he's in jail. We're waiting more information on a court date. We're waiting more information on what comes next. The stock exchange opened, of course, this morning here with absolutely no problems, as it has this entire week. So it's been a good day. But CBS News staying on top of this one because he, back in 2015, actually said he was going to join ISIS, but chose not to because he didn't think they would be as efficient as he could.
Wow, some really startling details there. Alan Devlin, thank you very much. Welcome to CBS News.
Thank you. Good to have you.
Yeah. All right, Thanksgiving is just 1 week away, and travel is expected to hit pre-pandemic levels, setting new records. According to AAA, nearly 80 million Americans will travel 50 miles or more over the Thanksgiving holiday, and 71 million people are expected to be on the road. So if you're traveling by car, gas prices are expected to be lower this Thanksgiving. Last year, the national average was $3.26. Falling oil prices this fall may drop the national average below $3 a gallon. That's according to AAA. Passengers getting on a plane, though, are going to have to leave early to beat that airport rush. AAA also predicts more than 5 million people are getting on domestic flights. International flight prices are down this year, so we could see more people heading overseas. And moments ago, we heard from Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg about the travel protections in place.
Our department stepped up and stepped in to use every power within our authority to improve service and to improve the flying experience for airline passengers. In concrete terms, Some of what that includes automatic refunds for canceled and changed flights, refunds for late baggage, refunds for services not provided like Wi-Fi or seat selection or in-flight entertainment. During disruptions, free rebooking, meals, hotels, related transportation. No more family seating junk fees for several airlines.
And of course, we'll be tracking those travel protections for you over the next couple of days. All right, let's bring back CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Kate Bilo with another look at the national forecast. Hey, Kate.
Hey, Vlad, good morning. Yeah, a lot of people thinking about that Thanksgiving travel heading into the weekend. And today and into tomorrow and even Saturday, I would say both northern corners of the country, that's where you may have some slowdowns. Let's go ahead and pull up our map and take a look at what's happening out there. We'll start off with a radar loop of basically the past 6 hours. I'm going to go ahead and put up the city so you can kind of orient yourself here and you can see where we're dealing with some problems. We've got rain and snow circulating through the Great Lakes. We've had steady rain. We had it overnight here in Philadelphia. It's now pushing up through southern New England. The rain coming down heavily, and we'll see some snow around the back edge of that. Out across the west, that's where we've been dealing, of course, with that bomb cyclone, and the atmospheric river continues to just completely batter Northern California with heavy rain. This does not look to end anytime soon. In fact, it may get worse before it gets any better. I want to quickly put up our watches and warnings, and you can see we've got a lot of them. These, where you see the purple, these are winter weather advisories across much of the Midwest, right on into the Northeast. Winter storm warnings in place, and we have winter storm warnings and watches out across the west, as well as another round of mountain snow will accompany this push of moisture. So let's take you through the forecast. We'll start off with a look at today, what to expect if you're traveling. It looks like a pretty quiet day across the country's midsection, but again, to the north, we've got New York, we've got Boston dealing with rain and gusty winds that could slow you down. No problems across Florida, no problems out in Texas where temperatures are in the 60s and 70s, lots of sunshine there. But of course, we've got the rain out west, 52 degrees today in Redding, California, with heavy rain. Seattle drying out briefly, but another round of rain and mountain snow in the forecast for the Northwest and Northern California. This atmospheric river, we just cannot get rid of this flood of moisture pummeling the northwestern portion of the country. And notice it's just going to keep on coming into the weekend. This is Saturday. Heavy snow across the Cascades, into the Rockies, right on down through the Sierra Nevada. We're looking at some closures through the mountain passes, as well as the threat with these strong winds for airport delays. 10 to 15 inches of rain is what they'll end up with here in Northern California. But look at some of these winds. Wind gusts tomorrow could reach 45 to 50 miles per hour right up the coast of California and Oregon and into Seattle as well. We could see gusts over 40 miles an hour as we get into Saturday. That is certainly going to slow down Thanksgiving travelers, as well as this heavy snow, where we're looking at more than a foot in some of the mountains. Coming up, we'll talk more about the Northeast and what we can expect snow-wise there. Let's send it back to you, Vlad.
All right, Kate Bilo, thank you very much. More news ahead. Stay with us. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Louisiana's plan to have the 10 Commandments posted in public schools is on hold for now. A judge rejected the state's request, but the court battle will continue. Arguments in the case are scheduled for January 23rd. I want to bring in CBS News reporter Katie Weiss for more on this. Katie, what is the state of Louisiana arguing in this case?
Well, Vlad, good morning. The Louisiana Attorney General's office has really maintained that this shouldn't be a controversial issue, that instead the Ten Commandments are an important historical document for our nation's legal system. And actually, just yesterday, the appeals court here in New Orleans cited that, well, they should be holding up the lower court's ruling from a couple of weeks ago that says that the law should not go into effect. They're saying that it should be not going into effect until the appeals court has a chance to hear all oral arguments in the case, which is not going to happen until January. But the AG maintains that the law will only apply, though, to the 5 school districts, or the ruling, rather, will only apply to the 5 school districts that are mentioned in the lawsuit. She even provided a written statement to us that says that there are more than 60 school boards that are not subject to the ruling of the court, and we look forward to continuing to defend this clearly constitutional law. Vlad?
So a final vote, as you indicated, will be held in Texas tomorrow to include a Bible-infused curriculum for kindergarten through 5th grade. So what's going on over in Texas?
Well, Vlad, as you can see, it really seems to be a trend right now among some red states to try to pass policies and laws that are more religious-based. In Texas, if these proposed changes were to pass, it would essentially make it optional for public schools across the state to implement this Bible-based curriculum in kindergarten through 5th grade. And as far as whether or not it could pass tomorrow, we're hearing that there is some support for it, and there's a pretty good chance that it could pass. But of course, that remains to be seen. We'll, of course, let you all know what happens. Vlad?
All right, Katie Weiss for us this morning. Thank you, Katie. If you are one of the many fans planning to see the Wicked premiere this weekend, AMC Theaters has a request for you, but it may not be a popular or an easy one to follow if you're streaming CBS News 24/7. All right, we have some breaking news to report for you. An Illinois Supreme Court has overturned Jussie Smollett's conviction. You'll recall that Jussie Smollett claimed he was the victim of a racist and homophobic attack near his Streeterville apartment in Chicago back in January 2019. He says he'd walked several blocks for a Subway sandwich shop. He was then charged with staging a hate crime. All right, folks, I know it's nearly impossible not to want to belt out that song, but AMC Theaters is asking Wicked fans for the one short day, that's pretty good, they go see the movie's premiere. Please resist the urge and leave the singings to the actors. It may not be popular, but the company started playing a 30-second advisory using clips from the movie to remind people to refrain from singing, flirting. What? What else do you do in a movie theater? You flirt. Or wailing. Let the stars defy gravity and everyone will leave the film happily dancing through life. Those are all song titles, in case you guys are all wondering. You can't make people not. If people want to sing during a musical movie. I don't want to hear it. You don't want to hear it? Then don't go to a musical. What are you talking about? You want to hear? I know. Or maybe people can sing it under their breath. All right. Let's talk about Chris Stapleton. Yeah, man, Chris Stapleton ended up with some big wins at the 58th annual CMAs last night in Nashville. He took home Single of the Year for his hit White Horse. The tune also won Song of the Year, and Stapleton won Male Vocalist of the Year. Country star Morgan Wallen was not at the CMAs, but he took home Entertainer of the Year after coming into the awards with a leading 7 nominations. All right, a piece of art showing a banana. Let's see that banana. A banana with duct taped to a wall, sold for guess how much? Guess how much? Anybody? Don't read the prompter.
I was going to say 6.
$6.2 million. Even though that banana was probably worth 35 cents. The work, titled Comedian by an Italian artist, was first shown in 2019 at an art festival in Miami Beach. It was bought last night by Justin Sun, founder of the cryptocurrency platform Tron. Of course, a crypto bro would buy this. He says he's going to eat the banana as part of what he calls a unique artistic experience. I'm going to go have a unique artistic experience myself when I head to the bathroom. All right, let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Kate Bilo with the last look at the national forecast. Kate, I don't know.
I'm not even going to ask. I'm not going to ask.
There you go.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the forecast. You know, if you want to have the artistic experience, we'll get back to you in just a moment. We'll see how it went. Let's take a look outside at what's going on today. We talked about the West Coast. The West Coast still getting pummeled by the same atmospheric river, that just ceaseless push of moisture they've been dealing with really all week long. And you can see still raining very, very heavily over Northern California. I want to talk about the East Coast. We haven't really hit on this directly yet. And we did get finally some much needed rain in the Philadelphia area here last night. These are areas that have been suffering from a pretty extreme drought. So most of this is beneficial rainfall, but you can see the center of this upper low still back to the west. We've got snow pushing from Green Bay to Chicago this morning, and all of that is going to kind of join forces with a new low off the coast. retrograding through the northeast here as we go through tonight. And you can see some mountain snow across central Pennsylvania, the Pocono Mountains, and right on into parts of New England as we get into your Friday and Saturday. That then moves out and things calm down. But you can see we've got winter storm warnings, watches, and advisories issued all throughout the east. We've got this upslope snow event happening in West Virginia as well, where they could pick up over a foot of snow there. Cities like Scranton, Pennsylvania, looking at about 5 inches. This is very elevation dependent. So as we go through the next 3 days, quiet across the country's midsection, but travel problems. If you're getting a jump on that Thanksgiving travel, the Northeast and the Northwest, that's where you will have slowdowns. That'll continue through the day tomorrow with strong winds both in the Northeast and the Northwest. We do see a little bit of improvement in the Northeast over the weekend, but more rain and mountain snow for the West. Vlad, I'll send it back over to you.
All right, Kate, thanks so much. We'll check in with you tomorrow. Thanks very much. That does it for me, folks, but stay right where you are after the break. Elizabeth Cook is live from San Francisco with all the news breaking from coast to coast. This is CBS News 24/7.